Hello and welcome. In Talking Point today, I'm joined by Mr. Shyam Bahadur Khadka, who is the India representative of Food and Agriculture Organization of United Nations. He started his career in 1977 with the Agriculture Development Bank in Nepal. He has been associated with the UN for more than 2 decades now and has held various positions in the United Nations. Welcome to the program, Mr. Khadka.
Thank you.
Let's first start talking about the objectives of the FAO.
The Food and Agriculture Organization was established in 1946. It's actually slightly older than United Nations itself, immediately after the Second World War, because to deal with the issues of food and agriculture, as the name says, basically to deal with the issues of hunger at the global scale. So it was established by the member states, and later on it was decided that it will become a specialized agency within the United Nations system once the UN system was established. In India, its operation began very early on, because India being a major country where population needed support with in agricultural technology, basically to increase the food supply. So we have been operating here since our establishment.
How do you look at the challenge of global hunger today?
The challenge of global hunger is pretty serious. Through time, the global hunger proportion of people who are hungry went down because of the increase in agricultural production and many other increase in income and many other factors. But today, today, about 800 million people go hungry every day. So the challenge is big. This challenge doesn't come for the fact that there is a low food production it doesn't meet the requirement. This comes from the fact that people do not have enough income to buy food. Otherwise, the food production is more than adequate to feed the entire human population. And there lies the tragedy. We have abundant food supply, but in the meantime, we have a pretty large hungry population.
And how do you look at the problem from the India's perspective?
India is one country where the agricultural production really went up. The proportion of the hungry people also went down very significantly. The income of the farmers also has been on the rise by and large. But India still has some 200 million people who are hungry. Today, 1/4 of the world's hungry population is in India. So if we do not succeed to eradicate hunger in India, the global target will never be met. So from that perspective, India has a big role to play, not only to sort out its own problem of reducing hunger or eliminating hunger, but also contributing to eliminating hunger from the world itself.
Mr. Khadka, usually hunger is seen by experts and is defined by experts in different ways. They say there are different forms of hunger. Can you please throw some light on that?
Yeah, the very basic way of measuring hunger is in terms of the calorie, which basically gives the energy for human beings to be functional. But that is only, and then usually when we say hungry people, it's basically calorie deficit. We have defined, the World Health Organization has that responsibility, along with the Food and Agriculture Organization, to define what are the level of consumption for each type of occupational group, age group, by gender and others. So we define. If the calorie intake is less than that, then we call them sort of hungry. But for the human body to function well, calorie is only one of the inputs, and then there is a protein deficiency, which we see in India quite a bit. And there also there are a series of micronutrients which the body needs, either it's iron or zinc or a series of things. So the measurement of hunger should basically be very multidimensional: calorie, protein, and a lot of micronutrients. But measurement is always a costly game. Measuring hunger in many dimensions are very costly. So we try to take the minimum things like calorie and protein, and we measure that way. But then there is a lot of other deficiencies as well, and that part what we call as hidden hunger. There's a protein deficiency. There's no more than protein. There are lots of micronutrient deficiencies. So the world has is closer to meeting the hunger part, but on the hidden hunger, there is much more work needed.
And where do you think India is facing a problem?
India's, sort of, in terms of calorie intake, yeah, according to FAO's definition, India is not far behind. India is not far behind. India's problem lies with a very specific group of population. One is the tribal population of India. The malnutrition is much higher in that group of population. And then there is another, the girl child. When we take the children, the male child and girl child, the girl child are more malnourished than the male child. And then during pregnancy of women, that's another area where India is lagging behind. On the nutrient the micronutrient deficiency, India's position is pretty precarious in terms of, especially the iron deficiency among women. So in terms of the calorie, where India's performance, over time has improved, although there's a lot more to do. But if you take the multidimensional sort of way to look at it, there's a lot of work to be done.
And it varies from state to state.
It varies from,
in
as
fact,
I told,
in a state like Kerala, there
Right.
happens to be a place like Attapadi where there had been so many cases of malnourished women
Right.
and children born
Right, yeah.
malnourished.
Yeah, you see, there is definitely a variation within the social group, and then there is a variation within the states. So that inequality of distribution is also there. And in the case of India, even among the population who actually have pretty good level of income to be able to afford food, you can see still some malnourishment in terms of especially micronutrient deficiency. Part of the problem is also the education part. When we eat, and you and I eat for the tongue, we don't eat for the body.
Right.
There's a knowledge gap basically that goes in the place. I mean, I can give you an example. In Tamil Nadu, some 25 years ago, I used to work there as a consultant to design a project. And the iron deficiency is very common in Tamil Nadu. We saw that. Then there is a lot of papaya that's also grown in Tamil Nadu. And then you can't meet two together. You have a lot of papaya, then you have iron deficiency. Then we realized that actually when women are pregnant, they don't take papaya. And we did a bit of research. We ended up finding out that papaya, when it's very young, when we use it sometimes as a vegetable, it can be abortive. But when it ripes, it's not abortive at all. So some traditional knowledge was useful in the sense of papaya, but it was overdone. So basically, that kind of knowledge gap, even within India, like squash leaves, in many states we eat that as vegetable. In other states we don't use it. If you use squash leaves, actually iron deficiency would go away almost overnight. So the food habit, the knowledge about the food, knowledge about nutrition, how to cook them, these things really matter. I mean, overall, in general, we overcook. The whole of South Asia, we overcook food. And then there is some traditional knowledge like, dal with rice is always a real good idea because you need to have a little bit of protein, for amino acids to function well. So some traditional knowledge we do very well, but through time, some knowledge were lost. New food has come in, and then basically, so there is in summary, there is a need to increase the income and food supply, but also there is a big need to educate people properly in nutrition terms, so that even with the same level of income, actually the level of nourishment can be much better.
And how do you look at India's food security plan?
Food Security Act of India is in its own way is a major achievement globally, not only of India's, to ensure people to have food. Of course, implementation has to improve, and also, part of the issue is a lot of information has to go to the people so that they can access their entitlement is reaches to them. Sometimes we have the entitlement given by the government, but not always effectively reaches to the poor people. That could be part of the problem. Other part of the problem is actually, I want to bring back to other issues, that the education part is still very important. One of the phenomena which we have not very formally did a study, we know that way. But especially in the case of women, if you take a woman, until she gets married and she has children, there is an issue of malnourishment, a little bit undernutrition issues are there. And then the same woman in the next life cycle, she faces a problem of obesity. So in the lifetime, you have both the problem of undernutrition, both extremes, which is we need to correct it. We need to correct it in the, when you are young, you are undernourished. When you are sort of a bit mature, then you face obesity. So at no point in time in our life, she actually is properly nourished. This is something which we do not know very formally, but this is definitely, if you look around, this is the issue we need to understand better.
I often end up asking this question, that whether our policymakers, are they too glued to the idea of providing food to the needy, that the quality aspect of the food or the nutrition aspect somewhere gets lost?
I said, nutrition is a multidimensional, multifactorial, sort of setting. So when you have a larger problem of calorie deficit, which is identified as a hunger, index, first you tackle to that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once you are bit in the way of solving it more comprehensively, then you focus on other things.
Okay.
But what is good is that like now, when we talk about government of India, we talk quite comprehensive about protein deficiency as well. The pulses, government of India is very keen to increase pulse production. We are working on our own also to understand the pulse production system. I think that the government of India does understand the whole dynamics. It's a multi thing. And also, sort of, Salini, I want to bring to your attention, there are certain factors that you can deal with money and a little bit of time. There are certain factors, it is a much longer time. Like, one of the research findings, we were analyzing now is that when the mother is of short stature, the child is going to be stunted. And then, but you and I cannot do very much about the mother's height today. Her stature cannot be changed. So it's a multi-generational issue.
Right.
And there are something which also takes a bit longer time, like mother's education has a pretty high correlation with the child's nutrition. It's understandable. But changing mother's education status is not also, it's a multi-generational issue. I have to deal with earlier generation to deal with the issue. So we have to, and then sanitation, for example, takes a bit longer time. Now government of India has Swachh Bharat, and sanitation has a pretty close linkage with the nutrition outcome.
The sustainable development goal of zero hunger is very much achievable?
In the case of India, if we implement the current allocations, financial allocations and current programs, it's not very difficult to actually achieve the zero hunger, because there is multifarious programs. There is direct food security related interventions. There are then there is a rural employment program also. There are specifically targeted programs for the girl child, specifically targeted programs for the pregnant woman. What we need to do is that the allocation over time will have slowly increase. It's increasing, but it should perhaps increase at a faster rate. But perhaps the challenge is more on implementing the program more effectively. The administrative side of it, the management of the program. That is also improving, but also technology helps. Like in the food security, where government of India has a food security related program. Sometimes there is a leakage because of the wrong identification of the target group.
That's right.
Or there is straight away forgery that you could double claims, double ration cards, all those things. Right. But the technology can be a big help. Like if you have an Aadhaar card, you have a biometrics, and then we have FAO has a sister organization, World Food Program. This institution is working on reducing the duplicity of the list of the beneficiaries.
Right. Is FAO also working on generating awareness among women?
When the Director General of FAO visited India, he had the opportunity to meet with the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi. And when he met with the Prime Minister, that was one of the topics that came up for discussion, and two of them agreed that FAO should help India on the nutrition education part. And then we are actually now we have provided for the funding, and we are putting up a proposal, and very soon we'll finalize the proposal. And we want to work with FAO is basically a technical agency. We have the knowledge, so we want to work with a larger governmental program where these programs also are made nutrition sensitive, and the nutrition education goes to to the clientele base through self-help groups, through cooperative movements, through farmers producer organization. So the grassroots organizations are actually used to pass on the nutrition knowledge. So we'll be working with the government of India in producing the knowledge materials, video clips, materials, text materials and other things. And then that is where FAO's role comes in important.
Addressing the food security challenge is closely linked with our production patterns too. How do you look at the growth of agriculture in India, and do you think that there's a lot more which is to be done on that front?
On the food production, Shalini, in 50 years' time, India increased the food production by 5 times. India's agricultural development has been impressive in many ways. From a food importing country until 1964-65, the country was producing some 60 million tons. The country was importing 10 to 12 million tons of food grains. And most of the food grains came under the American aid program called PL 480. So, but within within 2 decades, the country not only become food self-sufficient, but also started actually exporting. Today, India has pretty large export of food grains. It has one of the largest stocks of the food grains in the world. Any time government of India might have 50 to 60 million tons direct access to that level of stocks. Basically, from that perspective, what the country has achieved has become it is really very impressive. Where we did not succeed equally is, of course, on the distribution side. Where the poverty, inequality of income, and we could not sort out the poverty production pretty quickly. That's part of the problem. Part of the problem, I want to bring another dimension, Shalini, is that the income level in India actually went quite impressively went up. Even, it could be better, but it's very good. One of the difficult things we are facing in India is that the rate of increase in income actually, did not result into the rate of decrease in the malnutrition. So there was an increase in income, but with that we would expect in any circumstances increased nutrition
Especially
level.
the rise in
rising incomes. Rural income should have happened, but the malnourishment reduction didn't happen at the same rate. This is one area we need to understand a little bit more. Why the increased income is not translating into reduction of the hunger. That's one area where we fail a little bit. And then this is an academic challenge also, even for institutions like FAO, we have to understand. The other areas are a little bit, our food production is a bit narrowed down to rice and wheat. And one of the challenges the country faces now, unfortunately, is in food, it's not the quantity of food, it's the diversity of food which matters.
That's right.
So basically, the food diversity has gone down. The population which depended much more on millet, sorghum, bajra, and those areas. By shifting that from that to rice had helped in certain ways, but actually, like millet, you can have much more iron from the millet than from the rice.
So where is the problem? We have enough knowledge base.
Right,
in fact, there was much talked about bridging the gap between farm and laboratory.
Right,
Has it really happened, or is there a problem there?
No, within farm and laboratory, obviously, India's productivity is still, from the global standard, is still very low. So technology is there, but technology is not always reaching to the farmers to the extent we would like to have. But India still has, a very large potential to increase production. From that perspective, we really don't need to worry too much. But a bit more comprehensive and interconnected program. Governments all over the world, even included, it's a public institution. We are very good on delivering a very focused, narrowly designed programs, but interconnecting them is always difficult.
Yeah.
And in India also we do have that problem. We have various programs. If they could connect at the level of the villages, actually there's a lot of impact we could create. But things run in a bit of a silo, truncated way, and then there comes a bit of a problem. That's where we could improve actually.
Agriculture in India is a gamble with monsoons.
Right, yeah.
We are dealing with a climate change issue now too.
Right.
How should one cope with that?
The location of production is not the optimum at the moment. We relied very heavily on Punjab to feed the rest of India. And that, Punjab, there is a price to that. Punjab lost its groundwater very, very quickly. Today you go to Punjab and the groundwater comes at 400 feet below the ground. So which is actually, the groundwater are the resources which is accumulated over many years, many years. So we have lost the resource in one generation, a lot of resource. So in the meantime, the same production we could have done if green revolution had gone to Bihar, where there is a significant amount of water, or even eastern UP, or even for that matter Brahmaputra Valley in Assam, then the production system would have been good. I mean, similarly, the sugar cane production in Maharashtra doesn't make much sense. Maharashtra is by and large a water deficient state. But sugar factories went there, sugar cane production went there. So India, but good thing is still about India is that India still has a potential. It's not that we have finished with Punjab water and then we now what do we do with our rice production? We still have the potential areas where we could take rice production. So some of the policy shifts has to happen so that the production system actually matches with the agroecological resource
right.
endowment that you have. The country has diverse agroecological zones, and then the country has the potential, but because of the institutional factors and price and policy and other factors, the production, some part of the production system is not optimizing the resource use, and that's where we need to work. That's one area. Like especially on the groundwater, we are working quite a lot. FAO is working quite a lot on that. We need to find out a strategy to conserve the groundwater pretty soon. So far, the government of India has been working on agriculture because modern agriculture is about irrigation also.
That's right.
Without irrigation, you can't think about it. Without water, you can't think about it.
And we have just 40% of our farmlands as irrigated.
Irrigated, right? So basically, what is dry land in India is dry land itself. Even where it's irrigated, actually, we are relying very heavily on the groundwater extraction, and so far we have been. Government's attention has been to improve the supply of water to the farmers, and the water use efficiency is pretty low. I mean, it's a flood irrigation. We lose a lot of water in conveying the water, evapotranspiration. So that part we work, but what we need to work now is also a bit on the demand part. We're actually reducing where there is a water distress, because 30% of the blocks in India already are water stressed in one way or the other. And when we lose the groundwater, actually don't think only agriculture will suffer. 90% of India's drinking water comes from groundwater.
Absolutely.
If we actually sort of mess with that resource, we'll be in trouble.
But we have started with, for the farmers at least, a soil health card scheme has been announced.
Right, yeah.
How about the whole idea of also diagnosing the health of the soil and ensuring that farmers can be better educated about it?
No, that's definitely an excellent program, because another issue that India has to deal with is the health of the soil. So the initiative is very good, but what is also needed is that that kind of program is a pretty heavy technical support in terms of soil testing and advisory service on the soil. Because the idea behind soil health card is that every farmland, whether your farm or my farms are different. Even within your own farm, this parcel of land is different from the other. So there is a agricultural practice which is differ from one place to another place. So to respond to that with technically competent solution, you need quite a bit of a extension service backup for that, quite a bit of a research, and also even to really fill up the soil health card, you need a series of laboratories which actually support that exercise. So there are two things I would like to say. One is it's definitely a laudable initiative, and that's a very much necessary and relevant initiative. What we need to do is make it effective, and actually don't make it as a ritual that for the sake of government we are filling those cards. Not those cards are required by the farmers. It's for them,
right.
And they should benefit out of that exercise. And we should make sure that actually he has the incentive to fill the card and maintain it, because the incentive comes from the fact that how much support we can provide to the individual farmers.
Okay. All these policies and decisions put together, can they help India find a solution to the farmers' suicide issue?
The farmer suicide issue is has definitely some agricultural economics behind it. Indebtedness, and then crop failures. All those things are there. But it's not only always economics that actually explains this farmer suicide. If you really see the distressed agriculture, Gujarat agriculture, which is very dry, even Rajasthan for that matter, is very dry. But the suicide rate is actually not highest there. Suicide rate is higher in the central India. So there is a lot of, social psychological factors also involved. There are two things. One, definitely where things have gone wrong is that some agricultural technology has reached to the farmers where it should have never reached. Like the improved cotton seeds, BT cotton, it basically is a technology for irrigated agriculture. When the dryland farmers takes it, of course there is a huge risk that he is taking because the seed cost is very expensive. And if the production doesn't happen to the level of cost that we have incurred in buying seeds and other inputs, of course there's going to be a problem. So in that sense, it's a technical problem, but that alone doesn't explain the suicide rate.
We really don't seem to be doing much about farmers retaining their livestock and harnessing it.
Right. On the livestock, it's a very important question because India has the largest livestock population in the world, so India has to deal with it. And Indian farming system is pretty mixed farming system where livestock is part of the farming system. It's not crop alone agriculture. It's a mixed agriculture. So basic crop, that's good part of it. The growth in the milk production in India is even more impressive than the crop production.
Right.
We have achieved a lot. But the productivity per animal is still not the highest because remember we have also the largest number of livestock population. So that's one area where productivity we can still work on. But in dairy, at least, Shalini, the important thing is that the institutional infrastructure India has been able to put in place. Many other countries we simply don't have that. Where India is lagging behind, and FAO is working very closely with government of India, is the more on the small ruminants, goats and sheep, pork, and the poultry.
Fine. Sir, it is said that we need to really invest more in agriculture and ensure that its share in the GDP also increases. At the same time, we have to ensure that the farmers' interests are also protected. How do you look at the road ahead?
We need to devise policies which takes some agricultural production to the eastern India. The government already has thought, Prime Minister himself has said, look east and go east. That direction is right. But what is it that we need to do to go to that direction? How do we take the production from Punjab to some extent to Bihar? Or, there is some sort of adjustment of the production of the crops. The fertilizer policy needs a little bit of the tweaking, in my opinion. The over-subsidization of nitrogen is creating a little bit of distortion in its use. It's overused in certain states, not all states. On the rural finance, the institutional architecture of India is quite complex. Like the one thing which we need to change a little bit in the rural finance sector is that the financial institutions should really also look rural finance as a viable business, and agriculture as an agri-business. See from different perspective.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khadka, for talking to us, for sharing all those valuable inputs with us.
Right. Thank you, Shalini.
That's all for today in Talking Point. Thanks for watching.